CreativeNotCorporate.com proudly presents the Creative, Not Corporate Pop Culture and Media Podcast, chronicling the ongoing pop culture battle between the creative minds of music, movies, TV, and radio, and the corporate suits that control them. Now, please welcome your host, a digital media professional with over 25 years experience in all forms of traditional and digital media, not to mention managing two of the largest online radio podcast networks on earth. Here is the king of podcasts. If you're scoring at home, this is episode 45 of the Creative Not Corporate Pop Culture Media Podcast. I'm King of Podcasts. Thanks for being here. And one thing I want to do going forward with this show and my other show, the Wrestling is Real Podcast, on a regular basis, I really feel like when people listen to the shows, what they prefer to hear more than anything else is that I take time to rant. Not so much necessarily just going through stories and just rattling them off, but actually talking about the stories that are going on and what's going on that should be important, because that's what people are feeling. It's like, it's what it is. I mean, for me, it's where I got to come down to and just keep in mind. So that's one thing I want to make sure I do more of with this program, is to keep things into perspective of talking more about keeping everything into just one fell swoop discussion, and not necessarily kind of going off and reading stories, which I do want to do less of and talk more. So that's something I'm going to try to do more here with the show. Keep that in mind. Stick to one topic, more or less. Bring up a few things maybe at the end, and then that's how the show goes, because that's more or less how it goes these days. That's what's been working better for me anyway, than just going through the regular numbers of what's going on. Because for me, it's a matter of, for me to continue to give this bully pulpit and to continue to talk about the issues, to continue to crush and chokehold the creativity out of all the things that happen from corporate. We have to point out the mistakes that are being done in different media sectors that we do every week on this show. Point them out, and also look at the good that there is, and just say, point out the hypocrisy, point out some of the real stupidity that's out there, and point out some of the things of the risks that are being taken, just everything that has to go with it. And that's what we're talking about. Now, this week, I have taken iHeartMedia and I put a big target on them because I worked for them at one time. I worked for them when they were Clear Channel Radio. So right before iHeartRadio became a thing, I worked there full time, 2002 to 2004, and then I came back in 2007, 2008 to work for them again on a part-time basis. So I have my time in there, and I still have people that I know and within the cluster that I'm at, and I still keep up with things more or less with what's going on. So throughout this series, I have brought up iHeartRadio, which has been the bane of existence for those looking to get into media in the first place. Because as we know, radio has been a great hub for great entertainers to find their way somewhere into the media space and move themselves up. I mean, currently you see people right now that were part of radio before: Ryan Seacrest, Pat Sajak, Wendy Williams. Those are a couple that come to mind. And I say to myself, there were people that used to be able to host programs and be MCs and put things together. Jimmy Kimmel's another great example, right? And people used to have a way to have this platform on radio where they could really bust their bones. And it was more about what they said to make themselves more entertaining, more compelling, more creative. And to really be creative without the visual components that are out there, without all the things that you have when it comes to having elements to work off of, or verbal cues or nonverbal cues, or having other distractions take away from what you are saying or what you are trying to say, the message you're trying to convey, the joke you're trying to make. All those things. You have to really work on yourself, and you really have to think about how you could make it happen, because it's not easy, as we know. And so when that happens, you're saying to yourself, well, okay, how do you make that work? I mean, people that go right into television Do you notice how hard it is? So how scripted they have to be? The ad lib is not something that gets to be perfected. Excuse me. The way you range your voice, the way you project it, the way you enunciate, the way you create emotion without having to create emotion. Some people don't need that because, as actors, if you just have good facials and you just have a good look, that's one thing. But if you don't have that good look, but you still want to be able to do something, this is why radio works for me. And with podcasting, it's been made even better because you don't even have to do it from a studio anymore. You can do it wherever you want. And that's what I do with myself. And that's really been great. But it's where can you go to hone your craft? Podcasting is nice, but it also... you have to work so hard in grassroots to build your audience into something that's out there that people will listen to. Radio on the FM AM dial are still there. Okay. The reason why AM radio in some cases does well is because of the fact that they are able to, you have people that are on political talk shows or other shows that were disc jockeys. All the conservative talk show hosts, whether you like their opinions or not, they all started as disc jockeys. Do you know that? Most of them. All of them started as disc jockeys in one way or another. And then you have your morning shows on the FM dial. You notice that most of the FM dial hosts have been around for a long time. There are not a lot of new shows out there. There are new syndicated shows, but of existing shows that happen on a local level. But those shows have been around. If you're talking about combining what they've done on the local level to the national level, are decades. Look at what's at the top right now. Breakfast Club, you have a culmination of different hip hop jocks or hosts that work separately on Hot 97 and work together collectively for over a decade. Steve Harvey. His show's been on for at least a decade, but he was also given a shot because as a comedian, he had a group of people to work around. Ricky Smiley the same way, but they've also run around for a long time. Urban radio gives that kind of opening right there. But what about pop radio? Ryan Seacrest? Well, he's been on he was on Star 98.7 before going to Kiss FM. He's been on for well before Casey Kasem died, and well into the 90s. I want to say the early 90s when he started. And he's been around. Carson Daly was the same way. Early 90s. Maybe even the 80s on K-Rock. When you look at Bones in the countryside, and, Bobby Bones has been around for a long time as well. Brooke and Jubal, right? Rick and Bubba. I can go down the line. For pop radio, you also have You used to have Kid Craddock, but now that show is, without Kid Craddock, but that team that was around them continues to go. And there are others. Just think about it. Elvis Duran, of course. Elvis Duran's been on the air since 1984 on Z100? So these are people that are drenched, that were around well before 1996. When the fun was basically taken away. And now things were still corporatized and still kind of there, but the real fun went away in 2006 when we had the whole FCC Janet Jackson thing, right? Because that's what happened. And we talked about one of the casualties of that, which was Bubba the Love Sponge, which was an example of a radio show that with a lot of creativity, even though you might love or hate, but he did. And that's what it came down to. And it's saddening, but it's true. But iHeartRadio, which has some of these hosts, they're brought on lock, stock, and barrel just to be these shows that can be used on multiple markets to fill space on a lineup of any radio station you want, small, medium, or large. All of them, right? And iHeartRadio, for what it's worth, and iHeartMedia, how they're able to stay together and how they're allowed to be working as this big shoveling barge of debt that does not have to be broken up. It's not been forced to be broken up yet, which is why I don't understand it either. It's like a bank that should have failed, that was going to fail in 2006. Same thing. Why wasn't it get broken up into smaller companies? And then the other companies, because of iHeart's precedent, are able to go and add debt to themselves. Look at Entercom. Look at Alpha Media. Look at Citadel or Cumulus. Look at what they're going through. All these different companies are basically in debt. And why would it happen like that? Well, because Bain Capital and Thomas H. Lee Partners are able to go ahead and break even on their investment by holding them in debt. Do you remember going to that? Back to March 25th, 2018, when you saw how they were able to go ahead and hold things together and make it where they could hold iHeartMedia basically hostage in debt. These private equity firms buy them out while you had the company go ahead and say, oh, well, you know, what doesn't matter. We'll just buy all these radio stations. So there's value in the company, but it's a company that cannot make money. And the private equity firms make the money off the debt of the money that they cannot pay to pay their bills, to pay their bonds, to pay all the things that are going through. 10 years ago, Bain Capital, Thomas H. Lee Partners bought iHeart for $24 billion, $2 billion of equity invested for a 72% stake in the company. And well, the ownership interest, they have an interest right now in iHeart still, significant stake in billboard advertising, their outdoor holdings, and everything else. And then when the restructuring, when the company went to bankruptcy, who wins? Well, they do. The creditors would be awarded 94% of iHeart equity and full ownership. And that's it. And the company had to pay out to both of these firms $252 million in advisory fees and reimbursed costs from 2008 to 2017. Not bad for keeping everything together. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? But that's where we are. That's what continues to happen here. And now, do we have the investment from debt holders who are able to hold this company hostage so this company can never grow? See, here's the thing. Remember, what good are those companies? When they're holding this network in debt, while iHeartMedia has no resources and nothing to get themselves out of the gutter. And the other thing that happens is the company doesn't give a shit because they could just let it go and continue because they're being backed by these equity firms to make sure that, listen, they can be held to a certain way. And you're letting this company, and listen, they don't get broken down. Nothing happens to them. They just continue to go along like they want to. Ridiculous. Now, iHeartMedia is able to go and use several things of their company in order to leverage their debt and to also pay into their bankruptcy to get themselves out of the gutter. So I remember a while back they sold all their towers, right? They're not owning the towers, they're leasing them. That took some of the weight off, like $700 billion? Or no, $700 million. That wasn't really that much, but I don't know. They did it. They just gave up inventory of their ad inventory to High Times magazine now, $10 million of that. So trying to offer value of what they are able to offer in resources of their own, but they have no financial resources of their own to do anything else. It's usually what they have. Ridiculous. And now we're hearing that Apple, yes, the people that made, Mac, Apple, iPhone, iPad, yeah, they now want to go ahead and work with iHeartMedia. It looks like they're looking to invest, and just the thought of that made iHeartRadio stock rise, or iHeartMedia stock rise. It rose 32% to a big whopping number of 49 cents. This company is worth nothing. It's worthless to own, put it like that. But there's worth in all these stations. And God forbid the day that iHeartRadio can be broken up so more stations can be localized. So that things that I'm doing right now with the station I'm working on, the Spanish radio station, WIRA, Hola 104.9. If you get to listen to it, listen through it through TuneIn, and check out the station because we're putting music out there. We're putting voice people on there. We're putting on DJs. We're trying to do events. We're trying to do something with a radio station that's playing the Spanish music out there, the reggaeton, salsa, bachata that nobody else is playing. Because if you listen to the stations that iHeartRadio owns, they own a Latin division. If you listen to what the other Spanish radio stations do that are corporatized, it's the same songs over and over. No real creativity, nothing special to it. Local radio will bring creativity back to radio and get radio out of the dumper. I wholeheartedly believe that. But as long as I see Apple coming in now and others being brought in, because all they're going to do is just do investment just to kind of put something into, it's not even being done for any creativity. Because remember, Apple's just a technology service. They are just using this as another way to leverage iTunes and their Beats service. Because the plan is that if they get this here, the idea would be that Apple could go ahead and then use this to go and put their Beats One channel out. So that's another story we heard about. And when I see that, this is from VentureBeat, they think that iHeartMedia will offer Apple a deal to bring Beats One to U.S. radio so they can put it on terrestrial. And Apple has the money. They're not going to buy Clear Channel because they don't want any of that. But they will work with the company to put their product on there, and they don't have to spend much money because the company's in debt. They'll make some kind of a trade-off. So Apple is now looking at iHeartMedia, looking to their company's wallet or just its interest to save its business from bankruptcy. But like I said, it's, iHeartMedia has no leverage into what they're going to do. Now, there's been reports Apple's talked about buying a stake in the company, but that's just wishful thinking. If that were to happen, it would be the same thing over and over. Like, oh yeah, they might be able to get themselves out of the debt, but it will not help anybody in the long run. It's just another big corporate entity holding radio stations, 650 radio stations that would never get a chance to, or 850 radio stations, that will never get a chance to do anything special. 850 traditional local radio stations in the U.S. And they have the iHeartMedia or iHeartRadio app, which is very well done, which is the only thing that probably makes money or is profitable or is enticing to anybody. But this is the deal. So Beats One could go on to the FM stations and iHeartRadio, the iHeartRadio app. So that's what they're looking at it for. And it's funny that Apple, that helped to cannibalize the radio business by having the iPod come in to kill demand for conventional radio. iHeartMedia, a side company that in the debt that Clear Channel had, bought iHeartRadio, and then relabeled themselves iHeartMedia to get rid of the stench of Clear Channel. They decided to go and invest into iHeartRadio, and then it doesn't matter. They're still bankrupt. They're still $20 billion in the hole. And I see these companies willing to go and work with them, and none of them are helping to the detriment of iHeartRadio being broken up so that more stations can go to other people that will be able to use them properly. Because think of all these 100,000 watt Class A radio stations they have that they could be able to use in every market in the country, all the major markets, 850 radio stations, and be able to program them with real content. Think of all the different jobs that could be out there, the different places people can go. Now, things have changed. Like, here's the thing, local radio, it's still hard to make some money and really do something. You can't do stuff live anymore. But then again, people are not doing anything live much anymore on radio because it's all taped. It's all pre-recorded. There's a lot of people that are doing that right now. They're all doing that. And so you got to look at yourself and say, wow, that's some of the big problems they have. And it's a shame. But I'm saying one of these days, iHeartMedia needs to get themselves out of the dumper And it's not going to be done by themselves. They are never going to get themselves out of their debt. They're bankrupt. Why is it that the FCC or somebody comes in and says, okay, this has got to stop. This company cannot stay bankrupt and hemorrhage off their shareholders. They need to sell off. That's what's got to happen. They need to sell off. So I don't know what they're going to do, but they need to do that. This is enough. It's ridiculous. This should not be happening. It should not be happening. And I didn't even bring up the fact that a few weeks ago, quietly under the headlines, that SEC approved the way for iHeartMedia to officially restructure so they could exit Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Liberty Media, which already owns a stake, which already owns SiriusXM, has a stake in the company now. And then out of this restructuring, iHeartMedia is only got to sell 2 small market stations. They get to keep everything. Incredible. And that's the way it is. They just find a way to keep going. Why do they want to keep all these stations like they do? Why are they suffocating the radio industry like they do? Because that's what they're doing. Because then what happens is all the other companies follow suit. All the other companies do the same thing. They follow the business model. It's like a social society. Well, the people that work for them don't get anything from it. But the owners of all these entities, well, they're the ones that might make some money off of it, but they're burying everybody else. And who gets hurt? The listeners. Who gets hurt? The creators, the guys that could get a chance, or the guys and gals that could have a chance to get on the radio and have a chance to do something. So people go to podcasting now to really get themselves out, their creativity. And then we get this monstrosity 2 weeks ago. iHeartMedia now is going to host their own podcast awards. This is a hunk of shit. A 90-minute ceremony at the iHeartRadio Theater in Los Angeles. Hosted by, well, of course, their own morning shows. Charlamagne the God from The Breakfast Club. One of the podcast co-hosts, Holly Fry of Stuff You Missed in History Class, and country radio personality Bobby Bones. And Mario Lopez, who hosts a nighttime show on AC stations, will get to host the show. We get the podcasting division. I don't even know there's a podcasting division for iHeartMedia, but it sucks. Okay, iHeartMedia, the iHeartRadio app has podcasts, but the ones that are popular are not theirs. Okay? They might have the people being paid the same money to do podcasts, but they're not getting paid extra to do it. And they have to go ahead and add more and more work to themselves. So what creativity are they really going to put behind that, along with their own stuff that they have to do within the construct of what they ask for, the corporate structure, the corporate bubble? You can't pop that. You can't be really creative in that environment. No, you can't. And so Cono Byrne, this president of the podcast division for iHeartMedia, says that podcasting's role in the audio scene created the most excitement since the advent of streaming music. It'll provide a forum to celebrate the high caliber creative content that has made podcasting a major new audio category. Reflecting America's favorite podcast voted by the listeners themselves, we look forward to hosting this transformative annual event and encouraging everyone in the podcasting industry to push the envelope and inspire more creators into space. No, let's not put them in the radio. Let's just put them in podcasting, right? And not just that. What shows are we going to promote? Oh, they're not the grassroots. We're not people that are doing it from their home, their basement, their bedroom. No. These big monster corporate ones that they have out there. iHeartMedia, they're already doing their own stuff. They were able to acquire a podcast producer called Stuff Media, who no doubt those will get a chance to be put up there and have a chance to be noticed by all when they do the award show. So the voting has started, And you could vote for the awards through January 6th through website and social media. But here's the thing. Do we have any write-ins that matter? See, they already picked which people they were going to have the nominees. Like, I don't even know where they got the nominees from. They just said, well, we're going to put nominees out there. Well, what are the ones they pick? Well, let's see what the nominees they pick. As we said, owned by iHeartMedia. Stuff you missed in history class, right? We know all about that. Okay. So Stuff Media, some of those shows already on there. Atlanta Monster, that's one. Dirty John. Let's see the other ones. Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, Joe Rogan Experience, Radio Lab, Serial, NPR show, Stuff You Should Know, NPR. There's all these shows that are all corporate owned. Barbara Corcoran with Business Unusual, the Gary V Audio Experience, Planet Money, Comedy Podcast, Anna Ferris is Qualified, Brooklyn Boys, Monday Morning Podcast, Joe Rogan, WTF with Mark Maron. You're talking about all these shows that are all on major podcast portals. Panoply, Stuff Media, NPR, Podcast One, CBS Radio, or radio.com it's called now, right? And you look at that and you say to yourself, well, no wonder. I mean, you have all these other podcasts that come out here. And the thing is, the podcast landscape is now overwhelmed with all these corporatized podcasts. So the grassroots that were around 10, 15 years ago, you know, there are those that have big audiences that are grassroots, but they're never going to get the recognition in the mainstream because, not because corporate radio is going to get involved and put their bullshit in there for everybody else to look at. And is it any better than anything else? No, it's just their radio programming being put into the same lineup. It's their radio content just being repurposed. And if it's not repurposed, it's the same people doing the same content. They're just doing it in a different format. You ever thought about that? That's where we are. That's where things are with this whole lineup. It's bullshit. Ridiculous. But these are the things that are happening now with iHeartMedia. And I mean, listen, they make money off of other things. They have their concert series and they're able to make money off of that. So they do certain things. The iHeartMedia brand does some good things, but they are held back by Clear Channel and the mistakes of Clear Channel of the past. And because of that, everybody can leech off this. All these big corporate types can leech off of this and just pimp out whatever they want of iHeartMedia that they want. Meanwhile, real creators are left out of that platform. It's a mistake. It's been like that for a long time. Nothing we can do about it. Nothing we can do. All right. Don't want to bring up too much of what's going on. Just wanted to bring that up. I saw on the Billboard charts again, Girls Like You, Cardi B, Maroon 5, number 1 for 6 weeks. Stays where it is. And nothing big changed when it comes to the music and stuff that I wanted to bring up. The movie side, I got to tell you, Bohemian Rhapsody. Bad reviews, great movie. Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. I mean, he looked it. The story was amazing, of course. The whole setup. I love the Live Aid recreation at the end. I just think the whole movie was really done well. It was fun. It was interesting, and just anybody could relate to watching it and just saying, man, they were having a good time with it, even if you didn't know who the band was. If you didn't know their story, that story on its own would engage an audience, and it did. And I saw people who were coming out of the theater telling me that they watched it for the second and third time, and that was on Friday night, opening night. So it did very well. Very, very well. And this weekend I'm going to go see the sequel to The Girl in the Spider's Web. The Girl in the Girl in the Spider's Web, the one that's from the previous the Dragon one. I'm going to go ahead and see the sequel with Claire Foy, see how that is. So we'll talk about that next week. One thing I got to tell you about, which I was really excited about. Now, I know people, for those of you that I'm not talking about the whole Rick Walking Dead thing, but I never talked about that because I never watched the show. I just want to give you that heads up. So I know it's a big deal, and there's a lot of things that are going on with The Walking Dead. They're going to, if it's a great product, they're going to spin it off. So they're going to do some stuff with the Rick character and spin it off. And the Walking Dead thing, the franchise in some way, somehow is going to continuously continue. That's never going to change. Another AMC product is Breaking Bad, because now I'm reading that it looks like Vince Gilligan is looking to work on a film with ties to the series. A 2-hour film. We don't know if it's going to be a full-length film or a TV movie. So the details, there are no real details. The only thing is the Albuquerque Journal includes a log line saying the film tracks the escape of a kidnapped man in his quest for freedom. And the Journal also reports the title of the movie is Greenbrier. So that's where the final title is in the air as well. And production is scheduled to begin mid-November through early February. Oh, I can't wait for this. I'm looking forward to going and getting a catch at this and enjoying it. So just keep that in mind. I wanted to kind of put that across that, people should be excited about it. Because what else are we going to do? What else are we going to watch? Any new exciting TV shows? Like, I just saw House of Cards dropped on Netflix, the final season. So we don't know what we're going to have left, right? And who knows what's going to go on? Like you got to find your battles, baby. You got to find your battles on what you can go ahead and get yourself, whatever creative you have. Like there's, of course, the stage. Can you get yourself up on a screen? Can you get yourself behind a radio or behind a microphone or in front of a screen on a television? It's getting tough these days. And there's grassroots ways to do it. There's all the ways to go through YouTube or Patreon or what have you. You could do it through Periscope. You could do it through all these little smaller platforms. But to work your way up to getting to the big time, it's tough. And it's something that needs to be pointed out. And that's what this show is all about. So I hope tonight's show put it all into focus once again. And I'll keep doing that as long as I do this show. So anyway, we're going to call it a night. We'll do this again next week. Until then, by the way, thanks for allowing me the courtesy to do this show a day later, because the midterm elections I was watching is like popcorn watching, It's like watching wrestling, honestly, when you look at how it's done. So left it at that. Show's in the can today. We'll be back next week. Until then, keep corporate away from your creative. Thank you for listening to the Creative Not Corporate Pop Culture and Media Podcast. You can always support the show by going to Amazon through our special link at kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. Send a PayPal donation to paypal.me/kingofpodcasts. Subscribe to the King of Podcasts premium channel on CocoScope and learn how to be a better podcaster and learn how to produce better podcasts by going to cocoscope.com/kingofpodcasts. That's cocoscope.com/kingofpodcasts. And also contact the King of Podcasts for professional podcast production, imaging, web design services, and more at kingofpodcasts.com/production. You can also follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter at King of Podcasts or on Facebook at Creative Not Corporate. And don't forget to check out his other show, The Wrestling is Real Podcast, at kingofpodcasts.com.